Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Tired Boys podcast. We're here to talk about the 2024 Hungarian Grand Prix and the F1 weekend. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. Plenty to get into, of course, this week as well. We had a lot to talk about in the race. It was a relatively uneventful middle of the race and whatnot, but still plenty of interesting kind of points and notes to get into. Of course, your usual quick hitters and some other little topics as we go through. But I'm excited to get into it today.
Yeah, I think it'll be great. The race was interesting. Man, I've been dying to hear your thoughts about the main race on Sunday. Your boy Max Verstappen was on the boil, sir, once again. Kind of my favorite moments in Formula One. But yeah, we can get to that later. But yeah, I think that'll be a really interesting conversation. For now, let's hit the quick hitters because we got a couple good ones this week.
Yeah, so one of the big ones over the past couple of weeks since our last episode for me, I came across it from F1 Twitter, which pushed me into seeing a lot of this on my feed and like looking into it more. But the Goodwood Festival of Speed, have you heard of it?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually watching a couple runs before I left for the Bachelor weekend.
Nice.
I was watching a couple of the cars go up the hill. They had Ben. What's the Formula One TV caster Ben? What's his last name? Is it Williams?
Think so.
Not 100% on that, but he on the day that I was watching, he was one of the commentators. It was fun to hear his insight about some of these wild cars that you see. So yeah, definitely familiar with the Goodwood Festival of Speed, sir.
Gotcha. I wasn't sure how much you had heard of it. This was the first year that I was really like made aware of this going on. But
Okay.
For anyone who is listening and hasn't checked it out, it's basically a mix of road cars, experimental cars, hypercars, all different racing series doing this uphill sprint that's usually about 45 seconds to a minute for these cars to go up. It's a very tight track, just one car at a time going up through. So very cool to get to see all the different cars that are involved. There were some previous year Formula One cars, historic racing cars, and just a really interesting mix. And it's funny and like kind of cool to see cars of so many different shapes and sizes like taking a run at this, and all not necessarily all, but like generally being consistently within the same window of like time. Like it's not as big of a gap as you would probably imagine would be between some of the different cars that you see out there.
Yeah, because I think part of the idea about the I don't know if this is too like whatever of a word, but like maybe part of the rule set of Festival of Speed is the hill climb aspect of it, and so I think they're like it's not like a showcase in so many regards, whereas like they're actually setting their car up to like try and make it up make it up the hill in a reasonable amount of time. It's not just kind of the road that they choose to showcase. So yeah, interestingly enough, the cars like come prepared to like kind of race each other. Obviously, it's like hot laps type of things, but yeah, it's exciting in that regard.
Yeah, and all the different like categories of cars, like from just cars that you can buy from like just as a standard consumer from a dealership somewhere. I mean, might be a very expensive car to buy, but just like actual like road cars that you can purchase, up to these hyper cars and like spec cars that you see out in the different racing series. So I thought that was pretty cool to check out. I saw a lot on Twitter and was catching, and still am catching a bunch of different clips of it here and there. So definitely a cool thing to check out and something that'll be on my radar for next year, and probably trying to watch a little bit more as it's going on, and less just highlights. But the next quick hitter, talking about some of these crazy cars, Red Bull dropped the RB17 Adrian Newey design car. I don't think I talked about this on the last. Okay, just making sure. I thought this was. This was after the last episode, but the Adrian Newey RB17 hypercar was dropped. It's going to be a track-only car. I think there's being 50 of them made, and being sold for about $6 million a piece. So just some pocket change out there to get one of these Adrian Newey cars, for anyone who's interested. But it looks gorgeous, uses a lot of F1 concepts and everything. And I'm very curious to see if Red Bull kind of enters that realm of hypercar a little bit more than they've been involved previously, potentially like joining some of the, like, I know they have some vehicles, but like maybe endurance championships and things like that. Could be cool to see Red Bull kind of dip their toes in, if they're putting out cars like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder how much they would be able to dedicate to kind of breaking into other series. I'm curious if they would have like systems in place to what's the question I'm asking? If they have personnel that could help the organization make that move, right? Like, here's the question I'm trying to ask. Do they already have expertise in some of these other series, or would it be like a pretty cold entry? Because I think the same question that we ask about Formula One entrants would similarly have to be asked about Red Bull, where it's like, okay, but do they add like competitiveness, intrigue, and excitement, like by coming into these new series? Will they be competitive? Obviously, you could assume, of course, they would be.
I think it would have to be like a venture that they target and kind of grow. Like looking at,
for sure,
like you were saying with Andretti, building the factories and hiring the personnel and everything without even being like accepted as of yet. I think that would probably have to be the route that you go.
Yeah, of course. Just kind of putting those feet forward and kind of making it happen, kind of thing. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, but agreed, especially on the aspects of like what F1's looking for. Those other series are not just letting anyone and everyone in just because of the name, brand, and everything of Red Bull. You have to bring some competitiveness to that field. Otherwise, it's just not worth the while for those series to take them on. But yeah, beautiful hypercar that they dropped. I was just scrolling through a ton of pictures as they were coming up on my feed, looking at them. But a very cool project that they have going.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, to argue against my own point. Can you imagine a car that looks like that, designed by that guy, like just being slow, just being just the slowest one on the grid?
It would be hard to imagine, but
yeah, it'd be tough.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure they've done plenty of testing in air tunnels and whatever else with the car, but it's probably not as fine tuned as a lot of these cars out there.
Could be not. Maybe it was designed to just look really nice, but just be so slow.
Yeah, just the engine just doesn't hack it, and it's it's just a lame duck out there.
Not good enough. It's a lemon, an Adrian Newey lemon. That's what I'm saying.
It looks like that, but it tops out at 65 on the highway.
Right, exactly.
Oh man, that would be pretty funny if that were the case. think we might be a few miles per hour off there. But to move along into IndyCar, we've had two crazy weekends back to back in terms of incidents, and so massive. First off, just massive props to the AMR safety crews that they have and everything for IndyCar and what we saw at NASCAR as well. Very on the spot, and the aero screens and all the safety precautions that they've taken and everything in IndyCar definitely have saved a couple people's lives over the past 2 weeks with Stingray Rob's accident 2 weeks ago with Alex Rossi running out of fuel on the last lap, coming up and clipping him from behind and really ramping off. He was knocked unconscious while he was in the air, 109 G's of force with the accident, just flying, flipping, and he kind of came away from it with just a road rashed finger that was dragging on the ground while he was unconscious, and was able to and of course the gloves helped and everything, so not as bad as that could have been either.
Right.
But then being able to come back and even compete in the race in Toronto and everything, he was cleared to be able to drive and all. So that was just happy that he was safe, but a crazy incident. Just to be followed up by another crazy incident this weekend at Turn 1, where we had Pato O'Ward, whose car spins out around Turn 1, and then half the grid coming through, including Santino Ferrucci, going off the car that had spun 180, flying sideways along the safety fences and everything. Imagine if the safety fences weren't there. There's a lot of aspects of this that could have gone super poorly, but he was immediately on the radio able to say he was good, okay, and everything. So just some pretty wild moments over the past couple weeks in IndyCar.
Yeah, I think wild doesn't really begin to describe the scenes, especially in the what was the second one, the Toronto race with Ferrucci going up in the air. I mean, yeah, that's just crazy. My takeaway from it is I don't like Detroit. That track kind of sucks.
Oh, it's
for
awful.
That
so
opening. Bad. Yeah, that opening hairpin, and not just because it caused a bunch of crashes, so it's bad, but it's also how that's just kind of boring, a race that has 50 restarts like that, and then where every restart you can just it's like an 80-20% that the cars are just going to crash into each other again. To me, that's just a really boring string of events. Also, you're just seeing these dudes just mess each other up, and it's oh, what? Oh, man, can we please not race here at Detroit? That, or at least, how about this? Go the opposite direction, where that hairpin is at the end of the lap.
I mean, there are ways you could probably try to make it work, but at the same time, some of those circuits just drive me nuts. It's just super, super tight. You're in a series where the cars are spec cars, everything is running essentially the same, downforce and speeds and everything. The field can bunch up very easily in the IndyCar series and everything, and you're yes, these cars all go the same speed, so let's put them on tracks that you can't go too wide through a turn and there's cement barriers on both sides. That sounds like a great way to just have full course cautions for like half the race. It's just not. I just don't see the value in circuits like that. It just doesn't. I don't feel like there's much positive in terms of like actually seeing racing.
Yeah, for sure. It's like it's not a great race. You're just left at the end of it, just kind of like, oh man, like all right, that was fun. I guess people got points. I guess. But yeah, overall, just kind of a really disappointing that first one there in Detroit. And this, all right, this is the last thing I'll say. On the outside of that turn, every time somebody tried to like take like a wide line around, like going like right along the cement barriers, you could see them just like it was almost like there was like a what's the ski term, like the burbs, like
Moguls.
yeah, dude. They would hit that braking zone and their cars, it was just like pop 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 pop. So not only is it like tight, nobody's giving up any room, like it's a horrible place to like start a race going into, but also the outside line is just like, what is this? This is literally like a sewer grate or something here. So like not only does it feel like the layout is rough, but it's also like the surfacing was obviously just like terrible to race on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty bad. But bro, then the Toronto race was like, what the heck is going on here? That was actually a harrowing scene, seeing Ferrucci like flipped over like that. That was
Oh
not
yeah,
fun.
and I mean he was on the radio pretty quickly and everything, but
For sure.
just seeing that and then seeing just a dozen cars pile up behind him immediately. Like they even said on the broadcast that they're like that collected like a third of the grid. It's just crazy that they threw the red flag and everything, which they obviously needed to and should. But just the dangerous nature that you end up with by throwing like those cars on a circuit like that, I just feel like there have to be better racing circuits or like routes that they could go, or some way to give a little bit more space for these cars on those circuits. But yeah, just glad to see that both drivers ended up being just fine afterwards. The other little Indy craziness was we had talked about Teo Porcher being dropped from Arrow McLaren. So right afterwards, there was a lot of press that came out that was very like, and looking back, it seems very like targeted at Arrow McLaren and like trying to push this negative view to some extent. Teo apparently had done an interview with one of the media outlets and had a full form interview where he's was talking about kind of what happened and whatnot. And a lot the media things took a lot of it out of context, and it was basically like Teo Porcher was disgusted by McLaren and yada 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 because he had signed a multiple year contract, and then things shifted with their options, and they were like, okay, like sorry, this is the way that the team wants to go in terms of drivers and everything. It's not personal and all, but a bit surprising, I think, and they took some stuff out of context with these interviews, which made it even funnier or more interesting, I guess, that he was immediately brought back on for Toronto because of Alex Rossi breaking a finger in one of the practice sessions. So there was all of this like out there about, oh, Aaron McLaren, horrible, they're just sacked him for no reason, all this stuff, he was driving just fine. And he actually came out and had made a statement, I think prior to finding out he was coming back in to substitute. It was like, hey, a lot of things were taken out of context. I am very disappointed in that article because it didn't convey that I had left on good terms with the team and that, I was upset because I was losing the drive, but I understood why they were making the decisions that they were and everything. It wasn't personal against me. And so, of course, gets brought back in, has a nice race. I think he finished 12th in the race in Toronto, so comes back in on short notice and puts in a solid drive.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's going to be just a really nice lesson learned there for the young Teo Porcher. He'll be, I'm sure, just more mindful in the future about maybe how candid he'll be in interviews. Maybe he'll just be a little more mindful of word choice and understand these people aren't really his friends. They're not they may not always be trying to paint him in the best light. They are not, employees of the team that he works for, kind of thing. So yeah, I'm sure this will just be, if anything, just a learning experience for him. It's clear that he didn't leave on bad terms. If he's willing to go back and the team's willing to, that's probably the wrong word to say, but if he's the guy that the team is reaching out to for a short notice stand-in, there's clearly some type of some type of rapport there going on, obviously.
Exactly.
So yeah, I just imagine this will lead to him just being a better communicator in the future and just be being more mindful of okay, this is what these articles are about. They are not always in the interest of what my true story is, right?
Right. They care about clicks, not about you.
Right. And I'm sure to some degree he knew and understood that, but this may just be an example where he can just be all right, not doing something like that again. I'm being short, cold, whatever he decides moving forward. But yeah, I'm sure it'll just be a learning lesson.
Yeah, so definitely it could have been worse for a learning experience for him and everything, but yeah, just a kind of weird little back and forth over the past couple of weeks, but glad that he was able to come in and substitute in for the team, put in a nice drive, and continue to really push himself forward as a potential name for teams for different racing series in the coming year.
For sure.
But to move on to our favorite F1 fan fiction, I had sent you the tweet of the Expensify APX GP Brad Pitt F1 movie team just posting out that their fake driver was giving up his car in practice session 1 to one of the F2 guys, Paul Aaron. Posted a whole picture with him photoshopped into the APX jersey and everything. And I think I don't know if I did, but I think I have to follow their account now on Twitter just to see all the silly little things that they put out promoting the film. But yeah, a pretty, just another weird little instance from the APX and F1 movie coming out.
Honestly, dude, if Paul Aaron keeps it up, I think Apex GP could be a really nice seat for a driver like him with what they have going on. That could just be very exciting.
Yeah, a lot going for them, and he would be an exciting driver to add to the roster.
Can you imagine Brad Pitt and Paul Aaron driving together?
Oh,
The skill levels are off the charts.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to imagine, to say the least.
Dude, did I tell you? Did I tell you that I have my Apex GP like fan merch like on the
The
way? I'm about to be
jerseys in the
decked.
mail.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
I mean, they're my favorite team. Just bar none.
Yeah, I've just been disappointed they haven't been in the points the past few weeks.
Honestly, like it's crazy. It's they feel absent. It's almost like they're not even there. But I'll keep my eye out for them.
Yeah, I know. I know Fernando Alonso had kept his eye out. He was parked up behind one at the end of or when the red flag was thrown for Yuki Tsunoda's crash and everything. When they ended up restarting the session and all, he was parked up behind the car that was in fake Park Ferme. So
Wild.
he got a nice view of it this weekend, but the last couple little quick hitters here. So Haas announced that they're going to be using Ferrari power through 2028. So just continuing that partnership and everything for the next few years. And then during this past weekend's practice sessions, the global crowd strike outage that was affecting Microsoft machines and everything ended up taking down some of the computer systems. Particularly Mercedes was one of the ones that I had seen that dealt with this little technical glitch during the practice sessions and all. But it's I was surprised, I guess, to see that kind of I don't know, like affect or have any impact into F1. I didn't imagine that there was going to be much that they were using that would necessarily get bricked like that, but apparently a few different machines were affected by it.
Yeah, that's a totally surprise. Well, I think in the digital age, it will happen more and more. But like to my ear, that's like a surprising thing to happen. Yeah. But I imagine it's the type of issue that you could expect moving forward in some regard. Why do I believe that? I'm not really sure. Maybe I feel like there's like some. This probably has nothing to do with it, but what am I thinking? Like,
Well, I feel like there were. It was just such a massive like outage that it. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that it leaked into F1 at least a tad with different things. I mean, we saw major airlines. I think Delta is still canceling flights because they haven't been able to get everything fully back up and running properly.
oh wow.
So it was so widespread. I feel like I shouldn't be that surprised that some of the F1 teams use something that that had this CrowdStrike like software backend stuff on it, but I just didn't. I mean, I was surprised when I heard about it in general that it was this massive thing, and then to see it leak into F1 was just kind of just a little weird. To think that it was that widespread, I guess.
For sure, yeah, and I think what I was kind of missing was like it seems surprising, but also like kind of obvious at the same time. Like, oh yeah, I guess that
Right.
makes sense. Like there's only a very small number of companies that a large like car manufacturer slash like racing manufacturer like who is making the software and or the software slash hardware components that a company like that is using. Like,
Right.
do they have to, well, I'm sure most of it's proprietary, but they have to, I'm sure they would need to buy something from somebody. And that's what I was getting at is like, yeah, obviously it's going to be Microsoft, Apple, and like Huawei or whatever over in China, like whoever makes phones over there, right? Like
Yeah.
the companies that have huge what's the term, not cost cap but like budget, whatever, you get it, like
Mm.
the the total value of a company, like it would make sense that there's only a few that you can, that you can go with.
Massive market
So
shares.
thank you. There
Yeah.
you go. So yes, while I was surprised as well, like yeah, it doesn't kind of hit you. It's like, oh fuck, no, that makes sense. Like, who else would they be? Not in bed with is like that's has like a negative connotation, but like yeah, like who else would they be working with on their systems? Like yeah, it's only like one or two companies.
Right. Yeah. There's not as many options out there as you would think. So
Right.
yeah, just a interesting kind of freak thing coming up during the weekend, but. That rounds out the quick hitters, but continuing on into just looking at F1, the upcoming season, there was a little bit of news over the past couple weeks with some different team moves and potential options. So in our "You Work Here" section of the or segment of the episode, we have a couple of officially announced moves for personnel and whatnot. Matteo Binotto, the former team principal of Ferrari, is being brought on to be the CTO and COO for Audi as they're getting this project rolling for the 2026 season. And along with that, Audi also announced their first partnership, which is going to be with Castrol, a oil company, as their primary or their first official partner for the F1 team. So they're starting to ramp up the sponsorships and everything and partnerships as well. So it's a lot of just new, and there will be a lot of interesting things. I'm sure with the Audi team coming up, especially with them still finalizing their driver lineup for 2026.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll tell you one thing that's interesting, and I've got another one for you. So the team principal, I think, or at least some what the fuck is his main role? I'm pretty sure he is the team principal currently, Andreas Seidel,
For Kick Sauber.
Thank you. Yes. So he was recruited for this position. He was the guy at the top. He was currently until Matteo Binotto being brought in. So he was the guy. Audi thought this is our guy. He understands. We're going with him. He does an interview with an F1 related outlet where he's like, our goals are aligned. We know what we have to do. We're looking to expand. We have like very similar goals. My man was very confident in his position there, like on the Kick Sauber transition over to Audi. And within just a couple of months, I think it's like 4 to 6 or so, within 4 to 6 months, they're like, all right, this is not working. We're like looking to go into a different direction. So now they're going for, Matteo Binotto. So I thought that was very interesting, where within just a very short amount of time of having Seidel at the helm, they're just like already making changes in that regard. Another thing is Kick Sauber into, the Audi side of the agreement, I guess you would say, they're looking to spend a whole lot of money on new hiring contracts. Something they said like a couple of hundred positions are going to be available as like an aggressive expansion of what the previous infrastructure was. And then with Audi coming in, I guess they're looking to just bring a whole bunch of personnel in and look to kind of crack at the teams that have just like way more cost cap available to, or way more percentage of the cost cap available to them to work with. I think Audi, like in that regard, is going to be trying to compete with just raw manpower and just put the man hours in for their car and their vehicle. So I thought that was two really interesting things, is like aggressive moves with the upper personnel and aggressive expansion for their I'm imagining like middle management and like factory positions and like engineering positions and like in garage positions and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just kind of, I guess I'll use the word exciting things coming out of Audi in that regard. I mean, if you're an Andreas Seidel fan, I guess not, but they clearly know what they want, and that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And so the article I was reading was on autosport.com, but they talked about it a little bit, and that's it, I mean, what you said, it's exactly kind of how it went. Except for, so they had Seidel, they hired him on. They're like, yes, this is the direction in our heads that we want to go. But I think the difference between that direction and what they were hoping to build and everything kind of fell apart in the just quality of the car and everything this season in particular. Not having scored any points on the season, last in the championship, looking uncompetitive in a lot of races and everything, barely scraping through to Q3 at all this season. I think they've maybe in 2 races had one of their drivers at least make it to Q3. And so bringing on Bonato, I think, was part of what you were saying with that aggressive expansion of hiring and all of this, building up that infrastructure. And for Bonato, coming from a team like Ferrari that has the infrastructure in place, he's seen kind of what a very competitive team needs in those components. I think that's the differentiation between him and Seidel. Seidel had the right goals and trajectory in mind and everything, but maybe he just wasn't the guy to build what they need. Where Bonato kind of knows what pieces should be incorporated and everything a bit better in that kind of instance. So I think that would be a big part of why this decision was made. But I'm happy for Mattia. He's a good dude. He had his struggles at Ferrari and everything, but he did a lot of good quality work there as well over his time with the team, and had them at a very competitive level for a number of years with whoever was up at the top fighting for podiums and pole positions and everything.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think it'll be interesting to say the least. But yeah, a hefty amount of experience coming in with him and the experience from Ferrari. So yeah, I think that'll be solid stuff. The other point that we had to hit on for the "Do You Work Here" segment is Magnussen officially out, leaving Haas at the end of the season, but still targeting a seat for 2025. So hoping to stay, in the market and be, still driving on the grid next year, but will not be at Haas.
Yeah, and I saw a tweet that had me in stitches where they were like, Kick Sauber has the opportunity to do the funniest thing and have Hulkenberg and Magnussen as their driver lineup. They've already got Hulkenberg locked in, so they could just take Haas's whole lineup and run with that next year.
Oh, that actually is really funny. Okay, gotcha.
So
just have the same exact lineup that they do now.
Hulkenberg and Magnussen, but just in the Kick Sauber instead of the Haas. But looking at some of the potential conversations that have happened, so with that Kick Sauber seat not being locked in, Valtteri Bottas is also still up in the air. But from some reports, it sounds like there's been a number of IndyCar teams that have reached out to him as well. So he is getting interest from other series. I would like to see him stay in F1, but with the seats becoming fewer and fewer in terms of what's available and everything, I think the odds of, I mean, just as the seats dwindle, with especially guys like Sainz still out there available, it really, it's going to push someone out of F1, at least one or two people. But other people that might get pushed out, VCarb is talking about. There's been some conversations that, or reports of conversations at least, that VCarb is considering Isaac Hadjar, who's leading the Formula 2 championship, along with Liam Lawson for VCarb. Sergio Perez struggling, and Yuki could move up and take that seat at Red Bull, which would leave Daniel Ricciardo out of a seat for next year. So there's a lot up in the air with some of these positions and seats that are available. So I'm definitely just kind of keeping my nose to the air, my ear to the ground on the comings and goings of F1 signings, or trying to keep up with it. There's a lot of rumors out there.
Dude, but every weekend that Sergio Perez puts his car into a wall, the conversation definitely heats up, and like the more his position is called into question, the hotter the topic of, like, is it going to be Yuki? Is it going to be this guy? Is it going to be that guy? So yeah, the amount that we're talking about other drivers is directly proportional to how bad Sergio is driving, and right now it's pretty rough. I personally would like to see just Perez out, throw him to the wolves, and then bring Yuki up next to Max. Then you have Ricciardo plus Liam Lawson in the VCarb seat. I think that's solid. Hadjar would be, I think, an okay, upgrade, but you're going the untested kind of rookie thing. Has solid drive in Formula 2 currently, leading the championship, doing really well. But yeah, it's a lot of question marks, but that's what I think's gonna happen.
Yeah, well, and it kind of ends up putting you into it, thinking of Hadjar for that seat and everything. I think of some of the other F2 guys that have not gotten drives yet in Formula 1, or may not because the seat just wasn't available there, and who, in my opinion, were much stronger drivers than Hadjar. He's not bad or anything, but looking at Dragovic, who just annihilated everyone else in F2 his championship year. He was 101 points above second place, with Teo Porcher in second and Liam Lawson in third. So a huge gap there. And then Teo Porcher and even Jack Doohan. Jack Doohan was a multiple-time race winner in F2. He's been doing the reserve driver position for Alpine for the year and everything. So there's other drivers that I see as being potentially more competitive that don't have drives yet either. And so I just don't know if Hadjar is the type of talent that you would just throw in there over Liam Lawson and Ricciardo or something like that in that team. So it's definitely interesting, and there's always tons to talk about with it, but overall it's a big waiting game for us.
yeah, for sure. The interesting thing, to your point, isn't that the very here and now nature of the roster conversations? And like you're saying, just if you're, you said something there that's really sticking out, Dragovic's championship year, that's when your name is the hottest for teams to be looking and thinking, is this our guy? the farther away you are from that, I'm sure the tougher it is to have your name brought up in more of these scenarios. And
Oh yeah.
unfortunately, it's just like Hadjar's the guy that's winning now, along with like these other names, and it just seems like the more data we get, it just seems like that's oh, isn't that just the nature of the beast for these kids? Is like they not only do they have to be great, but they also have to be great at the time where a couple people are exiting and they're
Hmm.
like there's got to be some really shit years to be in Formula 2, where like
Oh yeah.
rosters are locked in for 2 3 years, there's like one seat available. So yeah, this must be the pain that these young drivers feel, where even if, like you're saying, for the Drogoviches and the Dewins and the Antonellis of the world, like even if they are that good, damn dude, timing's just off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like looking at Dragovic's year when he won, P2 was Teo Porcher, who we've talked about in IndyCar. He is I think a
Yep.
reserve driver for one of the F1 teams. I don't
Okay.
recall who specifically at the moment. Third was Liam Lawson, who we just mentioned. Fourth
Right.
was Logan Sargent. So like in that top four, Logan Sargent gets the Williams drive, and a big part of that with him being American and sponsorships and things like that. That of course comes into play. He was a quick driver, but again, he jumped both Lawson and Pourchaire for seats
Right.
because he was lined up with the right team's academy at the right timing.
Right.
Timing is everything for these drivers. So yeah, I could see it happening, but I feel like there are other good options out there for V Carb and everything at the moment. Anyway, I think Lawson is would be my priority to get into a seat if you're shifting things around over there with the four Red Bull seats. So yeah, definitely a just interesting time, and we're not even to the summer break. I feel like that's when we'll start to hear a bit more get announced and everything. Or I guess did we just hit the summer break, or we have one
I,
more race? Yeah,
yeah, I
we
don't
have
know.
Belgium, and then the summer break.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, my calendar don't work like that. My brain is mush, dude.
now I only knew that because I pulled it up real quick.
There you
So
go.
yeah, I'm a cheater.
But yeah, so then just the last like kind of roster bit before we'll move on. I take it there's been some interest from Audi in George Russell here for 2026. Obviously, the main get would be Carlos Sainz. I think he's on the top of everybody's menu. But you're saying there's some interest in George Russell from Audi.
Yeah, there's just I think been some conversations with him. They so I mean from the get go, it seemed as though Sainz and Hulkenberg were kind of their big targets. They got Hulkenberg pretty easily. He was like, sure, I get to drive for another few years and have a guaranteed locked in seat. Cool. And with Sainz, he has just been playing the field so much that it started to kind of leave things up in the air where he's been linked to Alpine at this point potentially. He's talked to Williams. He's been in talks with Kick Sauber. There's just a lot of ways that could go, and so the what I was saying was it seems as though if they don't get Carlos for next year and they just sign someone to a 1 year contract and kind of play the field the following year as they're coming in. That's when George's contract is up, and I think he's just one of the big options at that time whose contract may be available. So, of course, like, hey, if Carlos goes somewhere else because he wants a multi-year contract and wants to be locked into F1 with and ends up at a different team, like, we've got to set our eyes on kind of the next best option, even if it's not this coming year for the following. Starting to look down that timeline a little bit. So just little whispers at this point, but I mean, it makes sense. You're going for the best driver you can out there on the grid, best driver that would be available. That's
Right.
what any team should be going after. So.
Yeah, definitely agree, and I think that would be, I think that would be an interesting drive for him. We'd be so used to seeing him now in the, the silver arrow colors, but yeah, man, I think, especially if Audi is bringing a like more competitive pack. I mean, bro, here's what I'll say. I think getting tailwind coming out of this like awful run from Kick Sauber, getting any kind of like fanfare, tailwind, oomph behind you, like whatever phrase you want to
Oh
use,
yeah.
bro. It's man, I hope they come with it because
Well,
like
it'll bring personnel, it'll bring sponsorships. If you're creating excitement, that's eyes on your team. Sponsors love that.
of
Sponsors
course,
bring money, and money brings in good personnel. Like it just compounds on it by being able to, if you have the potential for that exciting driver to come on, and that really talented guy, like young but still a veteran like George Russell. I mean, that would be just a massive boon for the team.
yeah. If they could romance him, you're right. That would be pretty solid as a. What do you feel like? Would he be the lead driver then? So who would that be? It'd be him and
Yeah,
Hulk, right?
him and Hulk. Yeah, I
Right.
feel like he would be the. I mean, I don't think they have to
Now you're
actively
not so
say it.
sure.
I just don't. Some teams just don't actively like say like first driver, second driver. Like Alpine didn't really make an outward like this guy's our guy and this guy's our second guy up until they were doing contract negotiations and everything. Like I think they were
Right.
trying to play it relatively fair, and I think
Okay.
Ferrari has relatively done the same thing. I think people think of Charles as the guy because he's the guy who got the contract again, but leading up until contract negotiations and leading up till Lewis got signed, we had a lot of conversations about who is better here between Carlos and Charles. Maybe not over their full career, but like right now, because Carlos Sainz had been driving the wheels off his car. So I
Hmm.
think that opened the that conversation up, and without saying it, there wasn't necessarily a number one guy at Ferrari.
Interesting. Okay, so you think that kind of. So it sounds like you think that's a little bit of fan perception and maybe like a little
Yeah.
bit of narrative building, and it's like not actually going that way in the teams.
Well, and also just like I don't think it always is just an active decision. Like I don't think that Aston Martin is naming Alonso their number one driver over Lance Stroll, because that would hurt his feelings, and they can't be doing that.
Dude,
So
I imagine the roster when they print it out at Aston Martin. It says number one Lance Stroll, and then in the second column it says number one Fernando Alonso, and then they hand that to both of the drivers, and both of the drivers are like, "Yes, this is right."
they just no, yeah, they just both get a card that has them first and the other guy second. It's just each of us like, yes, I am the number one driver.
Well,
And
no, but the funny thing is, like, they still have to put but they're both in position number one. It's just how they
yeah.
how they format it. Yes, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I think that it could be an interesting option, but that's still ways down the road. I'm sure Mercedes is not one to let George go very easily. He's been in their system for a very long time, so yeah, I don't imagine. And with Toto, I think Toto is still his. I
His
forget.
dad.
No, I know Toto was Esteban Ocon's agent for a while. I forget if he was George's as well. But I know he was like double dipping there a little bit. So
Gotcha. Oh, that's crazy. So
yeah,
like
because
team principal being an agent for some drivers, no conflict of interest there, I'm sure.
well, I mean, he was Ocon's agent when he was going from Mercedes reserve driver and being put into the Alpine seat and everything.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it definitely no conflicts of interest there. I don't
That's
know if he
funny.
still is now that he's on a different squad, but let's well, we'll get into the Grand Prix weekend review. But first, we just wanted to remind everyone who's listening. We are looking to get 100 subscribers by the end of the year on our YouTube channel and everything. So if you're watching, like, subscribe. If you're over on Spotify or one of the other sites that we're out on, go over to the YouTube, like, subscribe. We appreciate it, and we're looking to grow the audience and just share our love of F1 with more people. So that's what we're targeting for the end of the year here.
Yeah, we just appreciate you taking the time to listen. We appreciate you hanging out here with us and hearing our Formula One takes. So yeah, if you're enjoying it, like you said, we're just trying to hit the 100 subscriber goal, so we'd really appreciate it. But for now, back to the show.
Yeah, so we'll start off just briefly going through Formula Three. I think the biggest kind of takeaways that I wanted to just look at were for the top three drivers in the championship for Formula Three. They all had some pretty rough weekends. We
Yeah.
had Lucas Browning, who finished in P8 in the sprint race, taking 3 points from the sprint race, and that was the only 3 points that the top three in the championship took on the weekend. So Browning jumped RV Lindblad from P3 into P2. He's 2 points ahead of Lindblad now, 4 points behind Gabriele Mini. And then the other kind of big highlight for Fornaroli, who was in fourth but bagged 19 points. He is now 1 point out of third in the drivers' championship there in F3. So a really just rough weekend for some of those leaders, and these other guys and even Browning just snagging 3 points, taking advantage of that, the little that they could, and some big points for some of the other drivers like Fornaroli.
Yeah, and that can be the difference, man. Especially in a series where you have 2 point scoring opportunities on the weekend. Drivers are like able to capitalize huge and rake in a terrible amount of points. And when you are going into the weekend, I'm pretty sure Lindblad was leading the championship going into Budapest.
He was P2.
Okay, he was P2 in the championship. Gotcha.
Yeah.
But yeah, having both races 0 points when I think you're like 2 or 3 races away from the end of the season. I mean, that's brutal.
Yeah, and it was really like just bad qualifying from all of them. Mini
Hmm.
started P13 or qualified P13, Browning P15, and Lindblad P21. I think there was a little bit of mixed weather at the start of some of the sessions and everything, so that mixed it up a little bit. But yeah, really just a rough weekend for those guys over in F3. But plenty of points there to be scooped up by a number of other drivers on the field. Nicholas Solov picked up the win in the feature race. So his third win, he has 2 sprint wins on the season at this point, and then picks up that third win with the feature race.
Hmm.
So nice weekend for him and showing some good quality drive there. But yeah, I think those were the main points that I wanted to hit on in F3.
Yeah, for sure. And for F3, I thought it was great for Solab. We've seen him win sprint races before in 2024 here for him. But this is the first feature race that he was able to win in Formula 3. So I think that's great for him and should give him a good amount of confidence going into the next round, which is, of course, Belgium. So yeah, I think that's great for him.
Yeah. So a nice, nice scoop of points for Solov and everything, and a nice win. He just had a really good drive. He started up towards the front, and was able to take the lead early and just kind of maintain that. But moving over to F2, I found it super interesting looking at F2. There was really no one running the medium tires out there. It was just the hard tire or the soft tire, and that created a lot of excitement in the sprint race. We had just some. It was very similar to how I feel IndyCar is, with just having the two tire compounds that have some pretty drastic difference in their pace and everything. Antonelli started P3, quickly is able to get up to P1, and then was just hanging on for dear life. The tires, as you got deeper and deeper, I was shocked in a 28 lap race that teams were trying to run the soft tires all the way to the end of that, and it really showed that ended up not being optimal with Antonelli. He just started locking up because the tires had lost so much grip. Wore the tires out enough that he ended up having to pit, and drops from up in the P3, P4, P5 kind of range all the way down to the back of the field, and only able to make it back up to around P15 by the end of the race. So just but there was a huge number of drivers that had taken that soft tire strategy. The hard tires ended up coming back pretty well, and brought Verschoor back into the lead. But we saw other drivers. Fittipaldi also had some struggles with the soft tires. An insane lockup where he did the Bottas slide and almost just without knocking out any cars, and ends up shredding his tire super bad, enough that it ended up getting a puncture from the wear a couple laps later. So the Bottas slide was at Hungary a couple of years ago, when he took out like 8 drivers right at the start of the race by locking up at turn 1.
Oh shit! Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
I was like, damn, dude, that moment's not coming to me.
Yeah, that was he like hit into like Lando, and then Lando slid into like both the Red Bulls, and everyone was off into the runoff area. I think it was like 2022 maybe. But just a rough tire strategy for those soft tires. They really didn't last, which is why I was just looking at 28 laps. I don't imagine soft tires going that long at most circuits. I mean, I know the tire compounds are a little bit different, the cars are a little different, but that just seems like a long time. So I was surprised.
Yeah, especially in the heat from the weekend.
Yeah, so I was very surprised that there just weren't really anyone that I saw using the medium tire compound for the race. So definitely made that an interesting sprint race. And then even towards the end, with all of the hard tire runners kind of coming back up, soft tire runners who were just hanging on to those tires for dear life, dropping back, that middle of the pack was super bunched up. There were like 6 or 7 cars within a couple seconds at the end, making the run for like P13. So it was a pretty exciting race overall. And then the feature race, we had our our, I believe it was pole sitter, or I get no, it looks like P3 starter Isaac Hadjar doesn't get out of the pit lane in time onto the grid. Just a team error that leads to him having to start the race from the pit lane, which is just brutal after all the work that he put in to get that P3 in qualifying. That's just super disappointing for him to just get the short end of the stick there, and really isn't able to make much ground up overall.
Yeah, and especially when it's just like a team communication error, that's just super unfortunate because obviously there's no car trouble, there's no mistake done from the driver. It's just like purely a timing communication kind of just like protocol error. And that's just got to be really frustrating, especially on a track where, well, I guess in Formula 2 it's like a little easier to overtake, but we did see some drivers having challenges overtaking on this track specifically. So, like, yeah, position really matters, and to just have basically just have a Sunday ruined like that, like when it's nobody specifically's fault, it's just like a team error overall. That's yeah, really really frustrating.
Yeah, and leading the championship as well. I mean, he's very fortunate that he has a decent lead, and that Paul Aaron had a rough weekend and didn't really. He Hadjar got 0 points in the feature race and still increased his lead on Aaron in the championship by 2 points. So with his sprint race points, so a very fortunate case over the weekend when it could have gone pretty poorly. But for the feature race, Hadjar doesn't make it out. We saw a lot of good moves at the front from the get-go. Martins moved from P5 to P1 with an insane just jump and grip right off the bat. He propelled himself up super quickly. Kimi Antonelli just had a really solid drive, very competitive. Was able to make it quickly up the field into P3, and then I guess that was after his he got a cheap pit stop under safety car on the soft tires and was able to quickly climb into P3 and then eventually into the lead for the race.
Oh yeah, for the feature race, that Antonelli dub was for sure an LS special cheater recall, 100%. Like that was beautiful.
Yeah,
for the team to take advantage of the safety car. Their car was in the right opportunity or right position to take advantage. So yeah, just a ridiculous advantage at the end of the race for Antonelli to make all those overtakes.
And I think he had pitted from P1 under the safety car, so he was having a very good race. But I imagine if he didn't get that pit stop, it would have started to look similar to the sprint race where his tires would have been falling off towards the end of the race and bring that into contention. With the cheap pit stop, he goes from P1 just down to P5 and is on brand new tires compared to everyone else out there. Was able to just chase everyone down and get the lead pretty quickly there. So yeah, a big win for Antonelli. Again, just showing his stuff out there and showing a really good quality drive. I think the consistency up towards the top is what probably Mercedes and what I would like to see if he's going to get that drive next year. I think that's important to have that consistency, and now he's shown it that he can kind of maintain that pace pretty well a couple race weekends recently here.
Yeah, definitely proven the haters wrong. That's for sure, and it could not come quickly enough. So that's great.
Yeah, so good drive for him. But I think that wraps up all of my F2 notes. If you're ready to get into the nitty gritty and the fun of the F1 race.
Oh yeah, honestly, I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear your excuses for Max Verstappen's behavior and why you will still continue to support him as your favorite driver, even though that was appalling behavior. I just got to hear the excuses.
Well, I mean, we can start there, or we can start with our winners and losers this week.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so I'll start us off with our winners this week.
Okay.
So one big winner, seventh different race winner of the year of the season, Oscar Piastri. Second season in Formula One, getting his first win. He 100% deserved that win, whether or not McLaren made it seem like that with their stupidity. But I just huge congratulations to Oscar. He had a really really good drive, and without McLaren's strategy, like spinny wheel that they do to decide what they're gonna do for for the race weekend. I just wish that it could have been more exciting for him in the moment than it was, but it's still a huge thing to be a race winner in F1. There's a lot of guys out there who are not and will not before the end of their career. So big props to Oscar there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I see the critical angle of the like McLaren's kind of bad strategy in that regard, but I still don't think that I have the whole team of McLaren as a winner. I think they were kind of on it all weekend in the practice sessions after FP1 with the Ferraris being pretty quick. McLaren seemed to hook up their package pretty quickly, capitalizing on the 1-2 from qualifying. I think was really strong. So they did things right over the course of the weekend. That like final stint was really silly over the radio. I definitely agree. But I don't believe that it was just like a big Piastri win. I do think McLaren did a lot well to get Oscar his first dub. Overall, yeah, I think you're right. Him individually could probably take some precedence in that regard, but I still think McLaren did a lot right, which is why I named the whole team overall as the winners. Because ultimately, I think Lando did the right thing.
Well, I definitely agree, and with Lando doing the right thing, and I agree with McLaren had a successful weekend. They jumped Ferrari in the constructors' standings. They got their first 1-2 since I guess it was Ricciardo and Lando back in 2021. I think would have been the most recent 1-2 that McLaren's had. So just a big weekend for them, but one of my losers was both Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris as well, because McLaren has given them a good car, and they've given them bad strategy up until this point in the season that has arguably lost them multiple races, or at least lost them the opportunity to try and win in multiple races, where they've thrown Oscar out there instead of double stacking like Mercedes does in the rain the other one of the previous races. I'm blanking on where that was.
I know what you mean though.
But leaving Oscar out on slick tires in the rain for a lap where he's going like 6 seconds slower than everyone on the intermediate tires, instead of just having him wait for 2.5 seconds to pit and not lose as many positions and all and just be fighting back. They've made bad strategic decisions with their pit strategy, tire strategy with Lando and Silverstone. Like, they haven't been on it and have cost themselves the opportunity at multiple occasions to potentially win these races. And then they put both of their drivers in a really bad spot. Oscar took the lead of the race. He was leading well. He had good pace out front. And then they have a solid gap. And instead of, hey, Oscar, you come in. You're the first driver. You got priority. And Lando comes in the next lap. They have Lando undercut Lewis to protect from Lewis potentially pitting and swap their drivers around essentially just because of the way that they told them to pit, putting Oscar in P2 by no fault of his own. Then they go out there and then don't make any change to that until the very last stint of the race, where they just like are just over the radio trying to make Lando feel bad enough. Lando, who just got his first win in F1 this year, who is like aggressively going out there, driving well, trying to get another win under his belt. He's leading the race, and they're just like on the radio at him again and again and again, being like, hey, Lando, so, like, we messed up earlier, so can you make up for it and just give the place back? And it's like, that shouldn't happen. You're putting Lando in a bad position. If he doesn't give up the position, everyone is calling Lando an asshole and saying he stole Oscar's first win from him. If he does, which agreed is the right thing to do, then he looks soft, and people will say that was soft. Like, a real winner is gonna go after it. Look at Seb Vettel, who didn't listen to team orders when he was leading over Mark Webber, and he took the win, even though it made him look like the bad guy in his team and with his teammate and yada yada yada. That's what a real winner does. People will point at Lando and say he's soft for that. He was in a lose-lose situation, and then giving Oscar the win that way when he could have just led the whole race on his own and gone from lap 1 all the way through. And he would have been super pumped, felt like he had put in a great drive, like everything came together, the car, his driving, all of that. They could have still had the 1-2, and you don't have Oscar coming over the radio like after his first F1 win, where when you look back at guys like Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, they're screaming into their team radio when they come across the line, and Oscar's like, thanks guys for a nice weekend. Really, really glad to get this first win. It's like depressing.
Yeah, I think that's him though. Have you ever listened to him talk?
I have, but also
that's literally how he is.
I know he typically is, so I didn't expect the Ocon or Gasly screams into the radio. But
sure.
I think there would have been a lot more emotion than we've probably seen from him if it didn't feel like so. It probably felt kind of dirty for him. Like,
yeah, no,
I
of course.
get my
that's
first win because the team orders, even though they screwed it up in the beginning. Like, he still got that opportunity to have this awesome statement win just taken from him by the team being, I guess, overly cautious to not fuck it up like they have a bunch of other times now. I think they were like, oh, we got to be just extra careful, like pit Lando first, not realizing how strong the undercut was, because the undercut came into play with a bunch of the drivers throughout the race.
Yeah, no, I definitely can agree with a whole lot of that. It does mar what could have been just a grand slam weekend. It does just leave this like really bitter taste in your mouth at the end of it. Like, oh, okay, well,
like I think with Oscar's next win, I don't think he'll only get one win. I'm sure he'll get others in his career. I'm sure when he gets his next win, and barring any weird situations, I imagine that we'll hear more excitement from him for his second win than we did for his first.
Yeah, of course. I mean, nobody wants to win feeling like your teammate just like handed it to you.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
That's what is this? Like my birthday? What? Are you like gifting me a win? Like, cool.
Right.
No, like I actually don't want that. I actually don't want that at all. Like, so, it's gonna feel better if I win like on my own merit.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. Like, not only does it put Lando in a lose-lose position, it puts Oscar in a lose-lose position. Like, how do you come out looking silly after winning your first Formula One Grand Prix?
How does the team come out getting absolutely annihilated online? After a 1-2, like that's mind-boggling that they screwed around so much that they put a great car on the track with two really good drivers, get a 1-2, and everyone's like, McLaren, you idiots. Like,
yeah, well, I think a lot of that is up to the fact that like they had the whole like breakup saga over the radio. So like we all got to hear them like literally like begging Lando, dude. And here's where I'm a lawyer, dog. They literally told him at the beginning, like, at your earliest convenience. And while I was watching the race, I was thinking like, yeah, like when's he supposed to do this? His teammates 5 seconds back, he's not gaining at all. Like, it actually is very risky, not just for Lando, not just for Oscar, but like for the team in general. That is quite a risky position to hopefully have your drivers pull off really well. So I can definitely understand Lando being like, yeah, well, I'm just going to wait until the last possible second because I'm not trying to fuck my race any more than it already is because of this ridiculous scenario. Honestly...
Yeah, or just
go ahead.
Waiting, just like you said, like 5 seconds off. They're going the same pace, just Oscar's not gaining.
Exactly.
So when is the earliest convenience? It's not convenient. It's just not convenient at that point. Like if Oscar got up within DRS range or something, like Lando can dive out on the next straight, let him through and everything.
Right.
But like. It wasn't. There was no convenient opportunity.
It was almost as though, like, the type of conversation that McLaren was having on their side to Lando, that would have been the words that I feel like you would hear if the gap was, like, 0.5 seconds and Lando would just not let Oscar, like, pass him if he was, like, right there for the overtake. If they're like, come on, man. Like, please, come on. But... bro, he's like a full race back. Like, I only say this to say, like, I understand Lando's resistance, hesitance, whatever it was, because, like, yeah, dude, that's a tough position to be put in by your team.
Yeah, I don't think Lando did anything wrong, but he still doesn't come out looking like a good guy because
nobody does.
Yeah, like they made all of them look bad in the instance. So
unfortunately, I just can't unsee the like huge like it's a first time dub for a driver for a McLaren that has just been like their trajectory is literally just like this, and that's just it like. It feels like that's just like they have infinite progress. So like I cannot unsee this like yes, it is like a weird colored like dot on the milestone trajectory, but I can't not see it as like, oh, this is huge for the team
Oh,
and for
absolutely.
Oscar and for just like their momentum, for their position in the season. Like, it's kind of huge. The fact that they jump Ferrari, they put them in a position where like now it is definitively a conversation between Red Bull and McLaren, where previously it was just like, oh, can they get there? Like, is it going to be like, no, like we're here now. So that's why I was kind of leaning on the giving them the benefit of the doubt. But dude, believe me, I agree with a lot of what you said. I agree with a lot of your points.
Yeah, well, and I agree with you too. Like and this is why we both get two winners and two losers because we get to talk about it. But McLaren
Sure.
absolutely had a good weekend in terms of performance and in terms of points for both their drivers as well as the constructors championship. Like
Mm.
that's big. Like they had a good finish or good results based weekend.
Right.
So I can definitely see what you mean in terms of that, but I think that just the way that they went about it made it just feel yucky. and
Hmm.
so
Oh yeah.
and
Sure.
so that's where I'm just like, ugh, that's not what you'd want. So yeah, I completely see your side with that as well. So a very mixed bag for them, but I'll hit you with my second winner here.
Yep.
Yuki Tsunoda in the points, beating Daniel Ricciardo, picking up a couple more for V Carb and for himself, while Sergio struggled in qualifying again. Put a recovery drive in and had a decent finish, so he made up for it. But especially with how well Haas has done recently, those couple points for RB and V Carb with Yuki getting P9 this week is just a big point grab for him. Kind of the best that he probably could hope for currently, with barring a bunch of the top drivers getting knocked out.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely agree with that. VCarb is in an interesting position where I don't think they have it to put tax to Aston Martin right now. They are like definitively in the middle of the pack, and there's like a bunch of room on either side of them. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure VCarb is really like attacking the Aston Martins. I mean, with a good run of form, anything's possible. But to my mind, VCarb's main competitor right now and Haas's main competitor are each other. So I think a lot of these weekends I'm looking at like those teams in relation to each other because
Yeah.
nobody else is really like competing for points. Obviously, Haas and the VCarbs are it's kind of like mid to late season charges where they're scooping up some points here and there, but all of that's going to matter, all of that's going to factor into next year for what they have available to them. So that's kind of how I've been having my eye in regards to that. And yeah, thinking of those four drivers, Yuki's just like way overperforming any of them. And yeah, just like slurping up a bunch of points that I think will factor in heavily to VCarb's favor. I know Hulkenberg has been able to manage like a good couple of points, you could say, but I don't think with the consistency that Yuki has been and the V-carb car has been shown to do. It seems like the Haas car is track dependent, where the V-carb is just like it's just kind of like 9 and 11, that kind of deal, no matter what track we're on. So yeah, I definitely agree with Yuki as a winner on the weekend. Continues to increase his stock in the ever looming Sergio Perez conversation. He's definitely positioning himself well to look like the right choice for the seat.
Yeah, he's putting himself in the best position he can if something
Hmm.
goes awry ahead of him. It's just
Yeah,
like
for sure.
scooping up points, but back-to-back points weekends, P10 in Silverstone, then P9 here in Hungary. So big weekend for him. But what was your other winner on the weekend?
Yeah, I thought Ferrari had a solid weekend and performance from both of the drivers. I know in the like constructors championship, not the best. Obviously, we see them getting hot by the McLarens, putting them further adrift from the Red Bulls, which I think if we're honest, like I don't think Ferrari's in it anymore.
Yeah.
We've seen them kind of, I'll say I'm not going to say bottom out, but I'll say kind of plateauing here, where we're seeing other teams continue to maybe make some improvements, eke out some performance here and there. It seems like Ferrari has kind of stagnated a little bit. But even in that regards, I think it was a solid weekend from both Charles and Carlos Sainz, where they're both in points grabbing positions. The strategy seemed fine overall. I think it was okay. And especially on a weekend where, like, dude, no other storyline really, like, stood out. A team seemed to be capitalizing really well or, like, pulling something out of nowhere. Honestly, like, I didn't really know what other string to pull on. Because, yeah, it was kind of the fight at the top there, but yeah, the Ferrari's just a little bit adrift from that, but otherwise, like, putting in an okay weekend. They're definitely not going backwards like some other squads seem to be.
Yeah, and like you said, their strategy, there was nothing wrong. We obviously saw them have issues with strategy earlier in the season, which had kind of messed them up a bit early on, and now it's just their car performance is being... I don't know if they've even gone adrift from Red Bull necessarily. I think they're about the same in comparison to Red Bull as they were at the start of the season. McLaren and Mercedes' trajectory has just been a climb up that whole time. So I think that Red Bull and Ferrari both have maybe they're on a slight incline, but that otherwise McLaren and Mercedes has just had a much better improvement and development of their car across the year. So I am with you there. I felt like Ferrari did the best that they could do. That was my note. But the car's just not there to be competing for those podiums at the moment. So definitely a kind of the they picked up the most points that they could on the weekend, and that's all you can ask for from the drivers, from the team on a race weekend. The development side they'll have to work on, but yeah, solid there. But for my second loser this week, it is just Pierre Gasly. He is that poor man, just taking all these new components on his car the last race, then not being able to even start the race. Then all he's talking about in the press conferences and everything is like, yeah, it's just that weekend's just chalked. Like, it sucks to not even get the opportunity to even try out there and even like go racing, even if like I just showed up to sit on the bench, basically, and then he goes out there and has car issues again that knock him out of the race. And it's just like, a really rough weekend again for Gasly. He's for him being the guy that Alpine kept, they're really not doing a good job of keeping his car out there on the circuit at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like, dude, it's got to be the car. Just so tough to drive. I mean, this guy is a race winner. I have a hard time believing he is some large part of the problem. Honestly, I can't imagine how it must feel to be Gasly, where like all you want is just like a sharp knife to go to war with, and they're literally giving you like a dull butter knife, like literally a butter knife with no teeth on it. They're just like, here's just a flat piece of metal.
Yeah, no, so yeah, my him being one of my losers is just like, it was just a rough weekend for
of
him.
course.
Like, no
more of a losing out.
Yeah, like not associating with like him doing anything incorrectly or anything,
Right.
but yeah, just the car not being able to take him around the track more than a few laps here.
Dude, which is brutal because yeah, like I likely am similar to a bunch of Formula One fans. Like if you're if you just generally enjoy the series, like I root for Gasly hard. Like I want to see this guy succeed. I want to see
Yeah.
him win another race, and it's just really tough when the constructor that he drives for, and it's not even like Ocon has it any better, right?
Oh no,
It's not
yeah.
even like, dude, they are just really in a bad way, and you just feel for the driver in that regard significantly because it's like they can't do anything to improve their position. They just have to drive the
Yeah.
brick.
Well, and that's kind of what I meant when I talked about Piastri getting his first win and like so many drivers never getting a win. Like both
Right.
Ocon and Gasly got their wins in wacky races. Like they
Of
were.
course.
It was not because they were in one of the top competitive cars and just had a out of their mind weekend. They still
Right.
drove really well on those weekends and took advantage of their opportunities, but there had to be some chaos for them to get the wins. Like a guy like Hulkenberg, Magnussen, like when you're stuck on a team that's just not giving you a car that can compete,
Exactly.
it's just so tough. It makes the sport super difficult when you're so reliant on your own skill and consistency as well as the machinery being put under you. It's just not. It's what makes it so difficult. But yeah, rough for Gasly, and that's why he's my second loser. He got kind of shafted 2 weeks in a row or 2 races in a row here.
Well, and to kind of bring this conversation into, talking about Red Bull and some of the other stories from the weekend, do you remember this would have been, couple races back, just casual, podcast conversation where we're just saying, well, give it, just one DNF here or there, and, Red Bull is looking. Little did we know we were actually speaking the future into existence where, like, if you look at the standings right now, like, that is literally what is coming true, where McLaren is one good result away from literally leading the Constructors' Championship in a world where at the start of it we were all like, oh, Max, 2 victories in a row, here we go, 2023 all over again. And then we were like, oh, but you know what? Well, here it is right now where we see Sergio not show up for a couple weekends in a row, crashes out in Q1, so like not even anywhere at the at the start of the race, and we are seeing now the point scoring deficit from the other Red Bull driver, and it's like apparent now where before we were basically just like we were just kind of making it up. We were like, well, if something like this happens, but we all knew, we were like, well, that's never going to happen. But it's like, well, here we are.
Yeah,
Crazy.
When Max won the Constructors' Championship on his own last year, like it's hard to imagine that it could fall apart that badly. But yeah, Checo is definitely his struggles have really become very apparent with both his position to Max. He's all the way down in P7 in the championship at this point. He got jumped by Lewis this week. He's 141 points off of Max. Max has more than double his points at this point in the season. That is, it's damning when it comes down to a Constructors' Championship fight. The Constructors is there's a 51 point gap now between Red Bull and McLaren, and that gap could get eaten up so quickly with just a couple of race weekends like this one. I mean, we like the point differential between Red Bull and McLaren this weekend. McLaren had 43 points and Red Bull had 16, so that's a 27 point swing. 2 of those, and McLaren's in the lead. Like, that doesn't even account for a DNF. That's just a P5, P7 from Red Bull with a McLaren one, too. That's not anything that is impossible or anything like that. And it seemed that way earlier on in the year for Ferrari to jump up. Didn't quite expect McLaren to swing it that much. But why don't you hit your final loser, and then we can just go through these notes that we had in a couple conversations.
Oh, you don't even realize how slick I am. That was my final loser. Red Bull.
Okay. Gotcha. I didn't realize
there you
that.
go.
I thought you were just leading into our conversation where you want me to slander my Lord and Savior Max Verstappen now.
Dude, that's how good I am at this. I was doing both, son.
There we go. All right. Well, to talk more about Red Bull, just with what was going on, Max talked about struggling with the car on the weekend, like through qualifying. He didn't feel like he had the pace there and everything. It was not easy. He put out some solid laps in qualifying, but I mean, he got gapped by Lando by like 0.3 on that, without Lando even getting another run in there at the end of qualifying, or having to go for another run there at the end of qualifying. Sounded like the car was tough to drive. When it came to the incident with Lewis and everything, I think this is where Max has grown a lot as a driver, but I feel like he has these regression moments that they're so brief, but it's his frustration gets the better of him sometimes. It's something, his frustration and his competitiveness combined, because he when we saw it with him and Lando in Austria, I think was it Austria? Am I losing my mind at which
we
races?
all are.
Okay. But when he and Lando came together and everything, he was extremely frustrated. And this is where I'm making the connections kind of. He was super frustrated because of the 6-second pit stop that he got that ended up with Lando being right on his tail after he had a little bit of a gap. He's now fighting for his life to stay ahead of a fast McLaren car that's got DRS on him around the circuit and everything. And he started being just a little overly aggressive and cause that contact with Lando in that race. When it came to this, again, like you hear him on the radio, like popping off about one. I mean, they get undercut. They see the amount of difference that the undercut makes, and instead of what most teams have done in previous history from what I've watched, when Max and Lewis were going back and forth and at it in 2021, and it was up in the air who's going to win race to race, if one of them tried to undercut the other guy pitted the next lap. They put a fast lap in as hard as they could on send it with the rest of the tires you got. Who cares if they burn out? We're pitting you the next lap. They got us. They hang Max out there for 5 more laps while he is moaning about how bad the tires are and how he can't stop the car, that he can't turn, there's no grip, and they just hang him out there for 5 more laps. So he's irritated. He's mad. You're coming around to the second pit window and everything, and they just let themselves get undercut again. Who cares if you have a shorter middle stint on your tires and there's more tire life to them? Like, don't let this happen again. He spent all that time he drops from P3 a couple seconds off of Lando after he gave the place back from the start of the race, drops to P4 after the first pit stop. fights his way back up to get back into P3 in the podium, and then they do the same thing again. Now he's just livid that he's been undercut twice by all of his competition, and I think that frustration just boiled over. He was on Lewis. He had very little likelihood of catching Lando or Oscar at that point in the race.
Mm-hmm.
He has 10 to 15 laps to get this move done on Lewis. And he just sent it too hard. Like, he was ahead, but he couldn't get the car stopped. And I don't think that it... Yeah, could Lewis have, like, steered it out and then maybe he doesn't lock up and then... Like, Lewis could have given him the position and let him through, just like everyone said about Max. Oh, you could have just given Lando the position. He had the 5-second penalty. Right. Just let him through.
That's what they say every time.
It's not going to happen. Lewis did his gray area driving in the best way possible for him. He knew Max was boiling in there, and he still just took the racing line, and Max hit him. Like, it was over-aggression from Max. It was, like, and I think it's just due to frustration. I think when he is like, I am doing the absolute best I can, and you guys put me in a bad position for things that are outside of my control entirely. I think he just gets... I think that just drives him nuts when things outside of his control... Because he's like, well, yeah, like, there are things outside of his control that happen. Rain could come down during the middle of the race and everything. But he still has control of those aspects. He can still, like, find a way to drive the car in the rain and be quick. Like, he can't help it if the team just doesn't pit him and leaves him hangs him out to dry. It is a team game, and so he needs to get that under control, because he was just blind when he made that move. He didn't think about how he has 12, 15, however many more laps to try and make this overtake. He's been gaining on Lewis. He's in the DRS. He's gonna have another opportunity. And he sent it at the first one, and it cost him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. And I think it starts with the, the lap 1 incident, where he gets ran wide, and then he's got to be on the phone back and forth with, like, do I give it back? Do I not? That kind of thing. So, yeah unfortunately, that's a pretty frustrating way to start the race. Yeah, and you just see it just kind of, like, build and build. Thankfully, like, obviously nobody was hurt. It actually kind of made me giggle how quickly he just, like, sped back onto the racetrack.
Oh, yeah.
Almost as though, like, a nobody saw that type moment.
Yeah.
But, whatever. It's interesting. I feel like that move is less egregious than the way he was, like, talking to his race engineer. I just thought that was ridiculous and just kind of, like overly rude. There's something about, like, the way Yuki Tsunoda does it where it's just, like, it's just generally whatever, but it's not like... he was like, no, mate, you effed me, you know what I mean? So, like, yeah. I think that's, weirdly enough, the radio behavior to me is, like, more egregious than the, like, racing incident with Lewis. That felt pretty tame, honestly, compared to, like, some of the other moments. But, yeah, just the way he was talking to his team, it's like, bro, this is... what's going on here?
I think the problem is that everyone, like, radios like that can just be publicly heard and everything when they're talking. Like, that's what makes it difficult. Because I personally, from everything I've seen and, like, the stuff I've read and all behind the scenes, like Max and GP have a very good relationship, and
Of course.
and GP is just like probably rolling his eyes at Max, and just like he's the most even keeled person ever, and just like in customer service, one of the tactics that you have when you have like an irate customer is to just like not like increase your level at all. You
Right.
just stay very even, and then they start feeling like a maniac because they're just screaming at this person, and the person's not like rolling their eyes or being like, but they're just being like just super even keeled, just trying to talk to them like a normal person, and it makes like that's the tactic. It makes the person feel silly for being like throwing a tantrum as an adult in like, and this person's just unfazed by it. It either makes people more mad or it like makes them calm down. So it's a 50-50 coin flip there, but you maintain your professionalism. And GP, I think he's used to it from Max. He like gets it, but like him saying the childish comment, I think it's just that Max sometimes will say like in the moment what he's thinking, as opposed to like after reflecting on it. Like I'm sure after the race and everything, if he looked back and was like, man, he would probably think what I did. Man, I had a bunch more opportunities like that. I gained on Lewis and caught up to him with this much to go. Like I could have just hugged him a little tighter around that corner, tried to get a good exit, or just stayed closer to him and get him on the next DRS zone kind of thing. Like he would have had another opportunity. And so that's where I think like GP being like, this is childish. Like everyone, I think that was just his like, shut the fuck up kind of thing.
Well,
like,
yeah, exactly.
Like not in a like you're wrong, like I want you to stop talking. More of like, you're making us look bad across everyone's radios. Like reel it in, bud. I'm gonna say something that's gonna try and like just that's gonna get your ear, and you're gonna be like, oh, all right, I like okay, I get it. And I think that's just, yeah, it was a bit much on the radio. He definitely needs to reel in like how he reacts in the moment. But I think a lot of the drivers kind of do. Anytime they touch, they're like any cars make contact, and everyone's on the radio like, it was the other guy. Like it's
it's like an act of war for sure.
Yeah. So of course when Max and Lewis make contact, Max is like, he turned into me, and Lewis is like, well, I had the racing. Like so like I didn't, but I did. It wasn't.
But at the same time, like the very generous take is saying, honestly, let the driver say whatever they want, because what are you going to do? Like control your emotions in this, 1,000 degrees car when you're like, battling other teams and drivers? Honestly, let them say what they want. Part of that is up to the F1 broadcast, where they're like, oh yeah, this is steamy drama here, where it's like, come on, like now you're intentionally, like you are opening that valve to let us believe you're opening the valve, giving us the ingredients to let us believe that, like, oh, look at the tension between Red Bull and their driver and all of this stuff. So, like, it's a bit of narrative grabbing from the broadcast to even, like, play those radio messages to begin with.
Yeah, and if they didn't think they were appropriate, or like, this is
that was a lot of F words, dog.
This is not what we should be having on the broadcast and everything. Then like,
sure,
yeah, they should make that decision. But I agree. I think like if GP wants to quit because he's getting screamed at by Max too much, he can do it. Like, right. I don't think the man he's not being held hostage at Red Bull. So I think their relationship is just fine. It's just that, and I think he understands, like, driver in 1,000-degree car under extremely high pressure. Has emotions. He's competitive. Like, he's gonna be like that sometimes. But then there's other times where he's like, lovely drive, mate. Thanks for everything, bud. And it's like...
Yeah, of course.
So...
but you are wrong about one thing is, I do believe GP is being held hostage. It's just not with a gun. It's just with a giant stack of money that they're just pressing against his head.
Oh, no!
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure Max takes him out for a nice dinner after he screams at him, and they talk at normal volume.
Hopefully.
But yeah, the other big points from the race weekend that I just wanted to touch on: Mercedes, Russell had a huge recovery drive after just it seemed like a team kind of flub in qualifying. He didn't have the pace, and then they're like, it's gonna rain a little bit, so I don't know about going back out there. Your time should be safe, and Russell just kind of got unlucky there. But Lewis, 200th podium, gets the P3. Great drive from him. He looked really solid throughout the weekend, so big props to him there. And then the other note I had was Aston Martin. There's a little teammate tension, which of course there's no teammate tension. They're both the number one driver, except when the team goes, "Hey Fernando, let Stroll through. He's faster than you right now. Let him go after Yuki, but he'll swap back if he doesn't get Yuki." And Alonso's like, "Okay, I'll be a team player and not upset my boss's kid." And lets him through, and Lance Stroll did not give that position back because that one sweet point was too tasty for him to give up. That P10, he was like, well, I could give it back to Fernando, but this 1 point is just really gonna it's gonna help me climb back into my fight with my teammate.
Yeah, that's yeah, the other angle of what Lando Norris could have done, and I'm happy to see it in the Aston Martin camp and not in the McLaren camp.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, that was the wrap on for me on the weekend. If you have any final notes, though, happy to hit them.
No, nothing that's gonna top any of the previous jokes that I've made. So I'll just quit while I'm ahead.
Sounds like a plan, but we will head on over to the cool down lap. But first, just to run it back, Oscar P1, Lando P2, Lewis P3, and in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren leapfrogged Ferrari up into P2 in the Constructors. So getting spicy over there in the Constructors' fight here as we're just into the second half of the season.
Yeah, with McLaren and Mercedes really kind of proving to be the, what would you say, the contenders, I guess you would say, trying to punch up towards Red Bull.
Yeah, Mercedes still enough points back that it's not there yet, but they're they're climbing as quick as they can. So So yeah, we'll head over to the cool down lap here. We're gonna do a day in the life, and just for me, I was just gonna briefly talk about our the bachelor weekend that you came to with a bunch of the friends. Just a super fun weekend. It was nice to have all of these great guys that I have be there and celebrate and everything. NASCAR was super fun. Like that was just a really cool experience. It felt very just like fan friendly with the parking setups and just like how everything was laid out. just a great time. And NASCAR was fun. I joke about it being just left turns all the time, but it was a cool event to be at and a fun race.
Yeah, I'll just kind of piggyback on that. I would tend to agree. I thought the NASCAR race was really exciting. There were a bunch of elements that I didn't expect to be like what would you say, like the exciting elements, or like you get to see where, like, I didn't understand where the skill would be coming from for like a NASCAR race or a NASCAR driver. My like One of the things that I became aware of was the restarts, where it seems like the restart process is a little bit to get used to, but you actually understand where it's like, oh, they're trying to bunch the cars up, so they're like really tight to each other. So the restart is that's got to be like one of the top skills that you have to get used to, is like, being literally like rubbing walls and tire walls with, these other cars. So yeah, a lot of NASCAR that I think was really exciting. Just the venue was crazy. It was
Yeah.
funny how it just went from like just like just so there was so much in between where we parked and like getting to the race. There was like
Yeah.
all the cars in the parking area, and then okay, cool, now here's like all the military, like
Recruiting,
yeah, that's all it was like army stand after army stand. And then there's the mile long like food thing, and like, okay, now you're at the track. So I thought that was wild, where it's just like a large procession of just like get all your snacks,
Oh
get all
yeah.
your goodies, all your hats and stuff on the way in. So that was really fun. What I didn't realize about the Bachelor weekend was that I was going to learn just every drinking game under the sun. I didn't realize that I was truly just in for just a gauntlet of drinking games. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's just a very common thing from my experience at Penn State, in particular, especially with tailgating a lot. You're standing out in a field with a bunch of your friends, and it's like, well, we're drinking, so what else are we gonna do? Like,
Right.
I talk to you guys all the time. Let's have some fun games or have all sorts
Mm-hmm.
of interesting things. So yeah, definitely a fun weekend, and I'm glad that you hopped on in and learned the games and figured it out. You ingratiated yourself with the group super well, being kind of having. I think you knew the least number of people coming in. Like,
Oh
you knew
yeah.
a couple of people, but
Basically, just like name and face is what I
yeah,
knew, but like
you
I didn't
were
have any rapport with anybody.
you were thrown into the mix, and it was very good to have you there. So yeah, a lot of fun that weekend.
Yeah, no, happy to be there. I'm glad you had a good time. What was like your favorite part of the weekend? What do you think you'll remember like the most?
Um, I mean, I think the NASCAR race is probably the top of it,
For
just
sure.
because it was something that I've never done before, and it was
Hmm.
cool to do that for the first time and go see a race with like all of these friends. So that was just a really cool opportunity. But I mean, it was just kind of everything I was looking for. I just wanted my friends that could make it up and everything to come hang out. I get to spend good time with them and everything, and just like chat, catch up, and everything. When I know in a few weeks for my wedding and all, I probably won't get to spend as much time chatting with everyone, because I'll be splitting my time a lot more
Hmm.
directions. So that was, I mean, that's what I was looking for. Just a good opportunity to see the boys and hang out. So
That's dope, and I think it indeed succeeded at that. Bunch of guys just having a good time. So
just
yeah,
guys being
it was a fun
dudes.
weekend. Yeah, guys being dudes, dudes being guys.
Yeah,
It was a
but
good
that
time.
wraps it on my end. Unless you have any final notes
No.
here for the episode.
No,
Alrighty.
that's a solid ep here in the books. Just wanted to thank everybody for listening. Thank you for hanging out with us. We do a new episode after every Formula One race weekend, so stay tuned. Check it out. After each and every Formula One weekend, find us on podcast platforms. Find us on YouTube. Find us on Twitch. Thank you very much for listening, everyone.
See you guys. We'll catch you next week.